Hey guys, today I'll show you a horror TV series named Black Mirror Season 3. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The first story, titled Nosedive, takes place in a world where people are judged by their ratings. Friends and strangers alike can use their phones to rate one another based on subjective impressions. A girl named Lacey looked at her friends' social media posts, giving them 5-star ratings, hoping they would reciprocate with a perfect score. Everyone had chips implanted in their eyes, allowing them to view others' scores. Lacey practiced exaggerated fake smiles in the mirror every day, hoping to charm others into giving her 5-star ratings. When she went to a community store to buy breakfast, everyone in the queue was busy looking at social media posts and rating others. The shop attendant eagerly gave her an extra cookie, hoping to receive a 5-star rating in return. She happily gave him a 5-star rating and he reciprocated with the same. On her way to work, she passed by a community with many familiar neighbors and friends. With the help of the chip, she could see everyone's scores. Looking at the cookie the shop attendant had given her earlier, she had an idea. It was difficult to smile while biting into the cookie, but she had to maintain her composure in public. She took a bite of the cookie and spat it out, as she only intended to take a picture with it, not eat it. She arranged it next to her latte coffee, making it look beautiful, and took a sweet picture of the two. After uploading the picture to social media, she tasted the coffee, but it was hard to swallow. Nevertheless, the mission was accomplished, as the photo garnered many perfect ratings, much to her delight. In the company elevator, Lacey encountered a renowned lady, Betts, and the two exchanged insincere greetings. Betts belonged to the high-score crowd with a rating of 4.6, so Lacey had to be extra attentive. She sneakily checked Betts's social media feed and noticed that she had a Garfield cat at home. To win her favor, Lacey complimented the adorable cat. Betts knew Lacey was just trying to please her, but she still played along and engaged in some small talk. After a pleasant exchange, they bid each other farewell and mutually gave each other 5-star ratings. Just as Lacey arrived at the office, her co-worker Chester brought her a drink to win her favor. Unable to refuse, Lacey took a cup, only for her colleagues to give her strange looks. She didn't think much of it and took a big sip, then sent Chester a 5-star rating. Little did she know, Chester wanted her help to increase his own rating. That's when her colleague mentioned that they were collectively boycotting Chester for hurting someone's feelings. Lacey was surprised to see his rating had dropped to 3 stars. Her colleagues all wanted to punish him, and so he gave him a 1-star rating. Upon hearing the rating, Chester checked it and was infuriated. The two quickly hid from him. After drinking Chester's shaved ice, Lacey received many anonymous ratings from her office mates. Her score plummeted, but she forced a smile and didn't dare to speak up. Lacey's lease was about to expire, so she visited a high-end community to look for a house. The luxurious design and elaborate decorations were breathtaking. She was captivated but realized she couldn't afford the rent. The agent mentioned a discount if her rating was above 4.5 stars. However, with her current rating at 4.2, she needed help from a rating analyst. The analyst said most of her interactions were with middle to low-rated people. If she wanted to improve her score quickly, she needed many 4.5-star people to give her 5-star ratings. On her way home, Lacey remembered a high-scoring friend she hadn't contacted in a while. She desperately gave her 5-star ratings, hoping for reciprocity. Every day, she would rate her friends 5 stars, hoping for 5-star ratings in return. Later, she bumped into Chester, who now had a 2.4-star rating and couldn't even enter the office. He begged for her help, but she didn't want to be dragged down by him again. Coincidentally, she met Betts in the elevator once more and tried to win her favor by flattering her and offering her a bag of bread. Betts saw through her intentions but politely declined. After they exited the elevator and bid each other farewell with smiles, Lacey was shocked to see that Betts had only given her a 3-star rating. At this point, Lacey thought of her long-lost friend, Naomi, who had given her a doll when they were kids. She decided to use the doll to evoke Naomi's memories. So she placed the doll with its crooked eyes on the table and snapped a picture, uploading it to her social media. As expected, Naomi immediately sent her a 5-star rating in response. This tactic seemed to work well. Lacey then remembered that Naomi loved a disgusting dish. Even though she didn't like it herself, she followed a recipe and prepared it. While opening the sauce jar, she accidentally splattered it all over her clothes. After hastily washing them, she continued making the dish. When it was almost done, her brother showed up and asked her what on earth she was making. She told him what it was and asked if he wanted some. Her brother, knowing she never ate it, looked at her disdainfully and asked why she was behaving like this. Just then, Naomi called. Lacey quickly put on a shawl, asking her brother to leave so she could meet with Naomi. Naomi said she was thrilled to see her and showed off her diamond ring, announcing she was getting married. Lacey responded with an exaggerated expression. Naomi continued to brag about her beachfront mansion and invited Lacey to be her bridesmaid. Tearfully, Lacey agreed and asked how many people would attend the wedding. Naomi said there would be hundreds, all with ratings above 4.7. She sent a guest list to Lacey, who was over the moon. After ending the call, Lacey's brother asked if she was insane, reminding her of Naomi's manipulative nature. He brought up how Naomi had cut her hair when they were kids and slept with her boyfriend. Lacey, desperate for better ratings, didn't care as she anticipated latching on to Naomi's success. She couldn't wait to embrace her friend and seal the deal, so she sent the deposit to the real estate agent and headed home. Once there, she began practicing her wedding speech, full of tears and snot. Her brother listened to the speech and asked if she was an idiot, selling her dignity for a higher rating and a lousy apartment. He questioned if she could really be happy in such a fake environment. Lacey replied that she just wanted the 5-star ratings from the high scorers, and that's why she never brought her boyfriend home. She couldn't let them know she lived with a 3-star fool. After a big argument, Lacey left for the airport to attend the wedding. Her brother, furious, gave her a 1-star rating. Lacey was shocked, but continued her journey. She got in a taxi and discussed her wedding speech with Naomi. The driver couldn't stand their insincere conversation and gave her a 1-star rating after she left the cab. When she arrived at the airport, she was informed that her flight had been canceled. Desperate and with the wedding the next day, she begged the airline staff to find a solution. A staff member told her there was a spare seat on a late-night flight, but it was only available for passengers with a rating above 4.2. However, now Lacey had a rating below that. Upon hearing this, Lacey lost her temper. People in line started giving her 1-star ratings. She quickly apologized, but security arrived and penalized her for swearing, deducting 1 point from her rating. It would be restored in 24 hours, but until then, all negative ratings would be doubled. Lacey wanted to take an express train to the wedding venue, but it required a rating of at least 4 stars to board. Blocked from this option, she had no choice but to rent a car to get there. With her current rating, she could only rent the lowest grade vehicle. Though it was far from ideal, she figured it was better than walking. However, she couldn't understand the navigation instructions in the car at all. Frustrated, she fumbled around until she finally managed to get the car moving. After driving for a while, the screen indicated that the battery was low, so she hurried to a charging station. Once she parked the car, she tried to plug in the charger, but it wouldn't fit. It turned out that the car model was too old for the modern charging plug. She asked the manager for an adapter, but he was busy watching an adult movie and was annoyed by her interruption. He told her he didn't have an adapter, and she begrudgingly gave him a 5-star rating. In retaliation, he gave her a 3-star rating. Left with no other options, she tried to borrow an adapter from other drivers, but no one had one for such an old car model. Annoyed, she kicked the car in frustration. At her wit's end, she decided to hitch a ride. An elderly couple considered giving her a lift, but the husband pointed out her rating of 2.8 stars, calling her a dangerous person. So they drove off, even giving her a 1-star rating. Just when she was about to lose all hope, a truck pulled up beside her. A woman with a 1.4-star rating invited her to get in. Lacey was almost in tears but declined the offer. The woman insisted, saying she wouldn't harm her. Left with no other choice, Lacey got in the truck. The woman asked if Lacey thought all people with a 1.4-star rating were terrible and crazy. She revealed she once had a 4.6-star rating, but that changed 8 years ago when her husband was diagnosed with cancer. She did everything she could, giving 5-star ratings to doctors and nurses, but the cancer still spread. They heard about an experimental treatment, but the limited spots were given to someone with a rating only 0.1 stars higher than her husband's. After her husband's death, she tore down her pretenses and felt more relaxed. She suggested Lacey try living like her, but Lacey declined, saying she couldn't do it and still wanted a better life. After a long journey through the night, Lacey was woken up by the woman the next morning. The woman said she could only take her this far and she would have to find another ride. The woman even told her she had put some emergency supplies in her bag and then bid her farewell. Opening the bag, Lacey found a thermos full of hot water. The warmth from the 1.4-star woman was a pleasant surprise. By hook or by crook, Lacey managed to hitch a ride with a fan of a stage play. Naomi called her and said she didn't need to come to the wedding anymore. Lacey asked why, and Naomi explained that all the guests had ratings above 4.5 stars, and they would be frightened by her 2.6-star rating. Lacey reminded her that she had wanted her old friend to attend, but Naomi retorted that she had a 4.2-star rating back then. Naomi initially thought that associating with a low-ranking friend like Lacey would boost her reputation by at least 0.2 stars, but now Lacey's rating was below 3 stars, and it wouldn't benefit either of them. Heartbroken, Lacey accused Naomi of only wanting her there to raise her own rating. Naomi shot back that she was also there to increase her rating. Angrily, Lacey hung up the phone and started cursing, which led to her being kicked out of the car. Thirsty, she opened the bag and gulped down a mouthful of hot water. Determined to attend the wedding, she found a young man with an off-road motorcycle and convinced him to let her ride it. As she sped along, she caused trouble for many drivers before arriving at the front door. A sign stated that no one with a rating below 3.8 stars was allowed inside. Unwilling to give up, she took a detour, climbing mountains and crossing rivers, only to end up stuck in a mud pit. Dirty and smelly, she shamelessly arrived at the wedding venue looking like a ghost. The ceremony had already begun, and the groom was giving a speech. Lacey waved her hands, greeting everyone. Naomi was dumbfounded. Lacey snatched the microphone and began her speech as a bridesmaid. At first, she spoke normally, saying the high-ranking guests probably didn't know her, but she and Naomi went way back. She greeted Naomi and the groom, saying she had always admired her friend, who was like an idol to her. Naomi's expression grew worse, and she urged the groom to remove Lacey. Seeing everyone's disdainful looks, Lacey stopped holding back. She cursed at the guests, shocking them with her behavior. They took out their phones and gave her 1-star ratings. Lacey continued, dancing wildly and embracing her true self. The high-ranking guests had never seen someone like her and were disgusted. They gave her more 1-star ratings, causing her score to plummet. Security finally arrived to apprehend her. She tried to use the adult doll to bargain with them, but she was ultimately overpowered. She was taken to the police station where her picture was taken, and the chip that recognized people's ratings from her eyes was removed. Her eyes felt clearer, and reality returned. Lacey was locked in a transparent glass cell, where she removed her dirty bridesmaid dress. Dust particles flew as the dress hit the floor. Removing the chip was like shedding her fake persona, and her eyes could finally see the world clearly. She felt liberated, knowing her brother wouldn't worry about her anymore. She then noticed an old man staring at her from the opposite cell. Angrily, she yelled at him, asking what he was staring at. He replied that she was the one who stared at him first. They began arguing back and forth, feeling more alive than ever. The second story, titled Playtest, begins with a young American man named Cooper, who loved playing games and was full of ideas. One morning, he packed his bags, grabbed his passport, and left home alone. A photo revealed that he once had a harmonious family of 3. It turns out he left after having an argument with his mother, not telling her about his trip. His mother was anxious and tried to reach him by phone, but Cooper hung up on her calls. Cooper was a gaming enthusiast, enjoying everything from thrilling 3D games to simple level-based ones. During his journey, he traveled the world and ate various international delicacies. After visiting many places across the continents and having a great time, he set his last stop in the UK. Seeing other couples expressing their love, Cooper felt lonely, so he decided to find love on a dating app. After careful selection, he chose to meet a girl named Sonia. They had a pleasant conversation during their date, and Cooper exaggerated his world-traveling experiences, winning Sonia's heart. Consequently, they spent the night together. The next morning, Cooper's mother called again, worrying about him, especially when he leaves without notice. However, Cooper hesitated and hung up the call once again to Sonia's disapproval. As they were about to have breakfast, the mother called again, but he still hung up. Sonia asked why he treated his mother like that, and Cooper explained that he just wanted to talk to her in person upon his return, as it was hard to explain things over the phone. Cooper then talked about his family situation. His father had suffered from dementia, and Cooper had cared for him until his passing the previous year. The truth was, Cooper planned this trip to escape from some unresolved issues with his mother. He wanted to see more places while he was still young. After listening, Sonia kissed his forehead and placed the phone beside him, urging him to call his mother. But Cooper never made the call. The next day, Cooper tried to withdraw money to buy a ticket home, but the ATM showed insufficient funds. With no other options, he reluctantly considered asking his family for help. But still, he couldn't make that call to his mother. Eventually, he decided to wait outside Sonia's apartment, hoping for a solution. Using an app, Sonia found a job for Cooper to earn money for his trip home. The job was at a Japanese horror game company which was looking for game testers. The pay was quite good, and the company was a well-known industry giant. The company's boss was a brilliant and business-savvy genius. Sonia suggested that if Cooper could get a sneak peek at their secret new project, he could make a fortune. So Cooper went to the castle-like game company. After some while, a HR lady came to introduce herself as Katie and greeted him warmly. Different staff members were testing and experiencing various games. As a gaming enthusiast, Cooper was eager to try them all. Reluctantly, he left the screens and went to the second floor, where the game testing room was located. Katie asked Cooper to hand over his phone or any other devices that could take pictures. Cooper obediently gave her his phone, which she turned off. Next, she took Cooper to a room and asked him to sign a waiver. She explained that it was a minor procedure that wouldn't harm his body. However, he noticed there was no space to sign. Katie realized her mistake and left the room to fetch the correct form. As soon as Katie left the room, Cooper turned on his phone and snapped a photo of the toolkit on the table, sending it to Sonia. Just as he was about to say more, Katie returned with the correct form. Cooper quickly moved back to his original position without revealing any flaws. He signed the form and handed it over. Katie explained that they were testing an interactive game experience system. She placed a high-tech device on Cooper's head and inserted another gadget into the back of his neck. Once everything was set up, she placed 5 coaster-like objects on the table and began monitoring data on a computer. Just then, Cooper's mother called again. Katie, puzzled, picked up the phone and wondered how it had turned on by itself. Cooper pretended to be innocent and clueless. The game experience began, and the table underwent incredible changes. The coasters turned into round holes and a 3D pixelated squirrel emerged, which then transformed into a clear, non-pixelated squirrel. Cooper was amazed, but when he reached out, he found it was just a projection. Only he could see it, and others couldn't perceive it at all. He then happily played a whack-a-mole game. After the experience, Katie said that this was just an appetizer and that their company had more thrilling full versions. She offered more money for Cooper to try them out. Cooper agreed and was taken to another room to meet the Japanese company's genius boss. The boss explained that ordinary horror games were too low level, and their company aimed to intensify the sense of terror. Before experiencing the full version, Cooper would need to have a neural network program uploaded to his brain. The boss claimed that this was the most advanced artificial intelligence software which would monitor Cooper's brain activity and exploit his deepest fears to scare him. The blue light on the headband reached full capacity, indicating that the program was finally uploaded. Cooper removed the headband and stretched his arms and legs, ready for the next challenge. This time, the game experience took place in a different location. A driver took Cooper to a gloomy, terrifying old castle. Upon entering, Katie gave him an earpiece so they could communicate at any time. She reassured him that nothing he saw would cause physical harm, as everything would be virtual. If he couldn't handle it, he could contact her to quit at any time. After Katie left, Cooper noticed a familiar painting on the wall. He then sat on a sofa, reading a book, when he suddenly saw a spider crawling towards him. Cooper became alert, but the spider was just a projection and didn't actually exist. The spider suddenly climbed onto the sofa and Cooper jumped up, overcoming his fear to stomp on it. When he lifted his foot, the spider had vanished without a trace. Cooper then noticed that a lamp by a window in the painting had suddenly turned on, along with a shadowy figure. But when he looked again, the lamp went out. As he was about to leave, a person suddenly appeared, standing still and staring at him. Cooper was so scared that he nearly knocked over a bird cage, retreating quickly. After regaining his composure, he took a closer look and realized it was the bully who had tormented him in high school. The software successfully dug up another person that Cooper was afraid of. Excitedly, Cooper danced and eventually moved right through the person. It seemed that the device wasn't able to genuinely scare him. Heading upstairs to find something to eat, he saw the shadow of the bully again. The figure suddenly mutated into a terrifying giant spider crawling towards him. Upon closer inspection, the creature was a combination of the spider and the bully. To Cooper, it was like a cute creature. Just then, there was a loud knocking at the door. Cooper mustered the courage to open it and saw Sonia standing there. She warned him that he was in danger. She said she had searched the image Cooper sent her online and found that the boss had applied for a patent for a human-computer interaction program last year. This program was deemed extremely dangerous and was rejected, but the boss continued to secretly develop the project, recruiting test subjects through an app. So far, 5 people had gone missing after accepting the test. She urged him to withdraw immediately, but Cooper didn't believe her, thinking Sonia was a virtual character created by the software. He asked her how she had found him, and she said she had used the satellite location feature on his phone to find friends. She insisted they needed to leave quickly as it was truly dangerous. Cooper laughed and didn't believe her nonsense. Sonia didn't find this amusing and angrily took out a knife, asking if he knew why his bank card had been stolen. She explained that she had copied his card while he was asleep. Then she slowly moved towards him with the knife. Cooper panicked and retreated, but Sonia continued to approach, holding the knife. Cooper turned to run, but the spider-faced creature suddenly reappeared with a bloody, gaping mouth. Sonia took the opportunity to stab Cooper's shoulder. Now furious, Cooper pushed her heavy body away and fell to the ground, crying out in pain. Sonia relentlessly pursued him like a cheetah, leaping onto a table and pouncing on him. She pinned him down and nuzzled him. Cooper tried to grab a nearby wine bottle to fight back, but Sonia saw through his intentions and pressed him down even harder. She then started changing faces, as if she had taken some kind of hallucinogen. Seeing this, Cooper forced to embrace her, but the monster refused. In the end, its head hit the knife stuck in his shoulder, and the creature miraculously disappeared. Cooper touched his shoulder and found it wasn't hurting at all. He quickly contacted Katie to ask what was going on. She said the projection couldn't hurt him, but Cooper insisted that the sensation of touching Sonia's chest couldn't be fake. Katie replied that it was impossible to have a sense of touch, and offered to guide him to a rendezvous point to withdraw from the game. Having had enough, Cooper didn't want to play anymore. He opened the door and saw a super large bed in the room. He wondered if Katie had taken a liking to him and wanted to assault him sexually. She said they had actually been playing a prank on him to see if he had become an obedient puppet. Cooper looked back and saw that the door had disappeared, trapping him inside. He then realized he had lost his memory and couldn't remember his mother's face or even his own name. He was like his father with Alzheimer's. Frantically, he smashed a mirror and picked up a shard of glass, intending to remove the high-tech device embedded in his body. The staff entered the room and restrained him. Katie and the boss appeared and hurriedly tried to shut down the program on their computer. However, they discovered they could no longer turn it off, as the data interface had deeply embedded itself into Cooper's brain, controlling the entire area. Human intervention was no longer possible. With a heavy heart, the boss apologized to Cooper. Subsequently, Cooper was forcibly dragged away. Just as he was about to go crazy, the scene before him changed. It turned out that everything he had just experienced was a part of the game. In reality, he had never left the room. Katie took out some high-tech equipment and explained that the game software might be a bit too powerful, as only 5 milliseconds had actually passed. After apologizing sincerely to Cooper, she sent him on his way. Now that he finally had enough money to buy a plane ticket home, Cooper returned to the house he shared with his mother. He went upstairs and opened the door to find his grieving mother. She looked at him as if she didn't recognize him, as if he was a stranger. She picked up the phone to make a call, but Cooper exclaimed that he was her son. Still, she didn't seem to recognize him and kept muttering about calling her son. Confused, Cooper wondered if his mother had lost her memory too. In the end, she dialed his number, causing his phone in the experience room to ring. It turns out he was still in the original room all along. Cooper kept calling out for his mother, convulsing uncontrollably until he couldn't take it any longer. Unable to reconcile with his mother, he left this world forever. It was later discovered that his unauthorized use of his phone caused a disruption in the software upload sequence, leading to a tragic error. The real elapsed time was only less than a second. Cooper tried to escape the real world by immersing himself in a virtual world and running away from home. However, the unresolved issues with his mother were deeply rooted in his heart and would remain his greatest inner demon. The third story, titled San Junipero, takes place in a virtual city called San Junipero. From the architecture of the streets, it is evident that the setting is the 1980s. A thin woman named Yorkie walks alone, dressed plainly and with a curious look in her eyes. She sees a fashionable girl being pursued by a handsome man. The two enter a bar. Yorkie is fascinated by the new environment and cautiously steps inside the bar. The atmosphere is lively, with a group of stylish people dancing happily. Her conservative attire seems out of place in this setting. She notices an old-fashioned arcade game, inserts a coin, and begins to play. A gamer guy approaches, skilled at playing games and hoping to impress Yorkie with his knowledge. However, his flirting skills are lacking. He recommends a racing game to her, but she is put off by the destructive imagery and declines, saying she wants to explore the bar some more and leaves him behind, disappointed. She gets a drink and finds a seat on a sofa. The girl from earlier, whose name is Kelly, approaches her and asks for help avoiding the persistent man. She sits down next to Yorkie, whispering for her to play along with whatever she says. The handsome man catches up with them, but the girl just wants to enjoy her night and spend some time with her friend, whom she hasn't seen in a long while. The man doesn't believe her, so Kelly claims her friend only has 6 months to live. Yorkie interjects, saying she actually only has 5 months left. Convinced, the man finally leaves them alone. The two women exchange names and shake hands. Kelly admits that the man isn't a bad person. They just met at a club called the Quagmire. Yorkie asks about the club, but Kelly tells her it's better not to know. Afterward, they head to the bar to chat and have drinks. Kelly gazes at her new friend, admiring her outfit and authenticity. As a passionate song plays, Kelly convinces Yorkie to dance, despite her lack of experience. Guided by her new friend, Yorkie is a bit clumsy but dances fairly well for a beginner. However, she starts to feel like the people around her are mocking her with their glances. Taking advantage of a moment, she pushes through the crowd and leaves the bar, flustered. Kelly noticed that Yorkie had disappeared without a trace. To her surprise, she had just stepped outside when Kelly followed closely behind her. Kelly asked why she had left on her own, and Yorkie shyly replied that as two girls dancing together, she felt like everyone was watching them. Kelly humorously dismissed her concerns, saying she was overthinking it because this place was meant for parties, and if people were staring, it was probably because of her own dazzling charm. Kelly's comment indeed made Yorkie laugh. She admitted that she had never been on a dance floor before, as her parents were very conservative. If she always listened to them, she would never be able to do anything. Kelly was surprised and told her that San Junipero was a party town, and she should dare to do things she had never done before. Then she touched her thigh. This, however, caused Yorkie to stand up, and she said that she couldn't do it because she was engaged. Kelly understood the situation and asked if her fiancé was there. Yorkie shook her head, saying he was somewhere else. Kelly then asked if she wanted to sleep with her. Yorkie hesitated, saying that she really liked Kelly but couldn't go through with it. Seeing that Yorkie was a tough nut to crack, Kelly didn't insist, and they shook hands before Yorkie left. Yorkie still felt conflicted. She looked back, but Kelly had already disappeared. Life's journey is full of crossroads, and there is no antidote for making the wrong choice. A week later, Yorkie stood in front of a mirror, looking at her plain reflection. She decided to break free from her conservative mindset and tried on several dazzling and gorgeous hormone outfits, but she was dissatisfied with all of them. In the end, she changed back into her previous attire, as Kelly seemed to prefer her that way. Yorkie returned to the bar from the previous week, searching for Kelly, who had been waiting for her. They met once again, and Yorkie finally took the leap, asking to enter Kelly's world. So, with admiration for each other, they drove to Kelly's seaside cottage. The view of the ocean and the changing tides was stunning. After experiencing something wonderful together, they lay on the bed and chatted. Yorkie told Kelly that this was her first time. She had never been intimate with anyone, male or female, in either the virtual city or the real world. Kelly was surprised and asked if she did say she had a fiancé. Yorkie replied that it was a long story and she would tell her when the opportunity arose. Kelly confessed that she was bisexual. She used to like men and even had a long marriage with one. However, she later discovered that she could be attracted to women as well. Though she never cheated, her husband had been unfaithful. In any case, she intended to enjoy her life here to the fullest before her time came. At this point, it was nearly midnight, and when the clock struck 12, they would have to return to the real world. The two hurried to savor their remaining moments together. A week later, Yorkie returned to the bar, searching for Kelly, but couldn't find her. The bartender hadn't seen her either and suggested that she try the Quagmire Club. Confused, Yorkie asked what the Quagmire Club was, but the bartender only smirked and didn't answer. So Yorkie embarked on a journey to find her lover. After crossing the sand, she arrived at the Quagmire Club. Here, people were openly and shamelessly getting intimate with one another. There was even a caged deathmatch arena. Yorkie couldn't find Kelly there, but the handsome man from the beginning of the story recognized her. When she asked him where she could find Kelly, he replied that if she didn't know, he wouldn't either. As Yorkie turned to leave, the man suggested trying a different time because this world had the 80s, 90s, and 2002. Another week passed, and now they were in the 80s, as evidenced by the TV models. People were still partying wildly on the dance floor. This time, she ran into the gamer guy who asked her why she was there. She told him she was looking for someone but had to leave hastily, leaving the gamer guy alone. Yet another week went by, and the window displays now featured 90s Philips TVs. Movie billboards confirmed they were in the 90s. Still unable to find Kelly, Yorkie returned to the seaside cottage, but her lover was nowhere to be found. A week later, they were in 2002. The TVs and gaming consoles had upgraded once again. A man and woman were having a blast on a dance machine, and to her surprise, it was the gamer guy and Kelly. After their dance, Kelly was astonished to see Yorkie and excused herself to go to the restroom. Yorkie ignored the gamer guy's greeting and hurried after Kelly, stopping her from leaving. Kelly asked why she was there, and Yorkie replied that she'd been searching for her for a long time and wondered why Kelly had been avoiding her. Kelly's response was similar to how she had treated the handsome man previously. She said she hadn't been avoiding her and she didn't owe her anything. With that, she walked toward the restroom. Yorkie couldn't believe Kelly could be so cold-hearted and followed her, saying she didn't understand the significance of their relationship. Kelly retorted that it had been a fun fling, but Yorkie was ruining it. Yorkie asked if she felt no guilt and had no feelings at all, then left heartbroken. In truth, Kelly wasn't heartless and felt terrible herself. Frustrated, she punched a glass window, but both her hand and the glass remained unharmed. This place was indeed not the real world. Kelly rushed outside to find Yorkie sitting on the rooftop, seemingly wanting to end her life. She hurried over and told Yorkie that she was afraid to fall in love with anyone because she didn't know how much longer she had to live. Before she could finish, Yorkie silenced her with a passionate kiss. After their embrace, Yorkie told Kelly that she was getting married to her fiancé next week. Even if her family didn't approve, she would go through with the wedding. In response, Kelly revealed that she had cancer, which had spread throughout her body. Her doctor had said 6 months ago that she only had 3 months to live. She wouldn't stay in this world after her death because her husband, who had died 2 years ago, didn't like it here and hadn't stayed. She wanted to be buried with him. Yorkie asked how someone could not like this place. Kelly explained that her husband didn't believe in it and hadn't even wanted to visit or experience life here. Yorkie said that without this place, they would never have met. Kelly countered that they could have met outside, but Yorkie disagreed, saying it would never happen. Even if they did meet, Kelly wouldn't have liked her. Unconvinced, Kelly suggested they try meeting in person to see if she would fall for her. Yorkie was afraid, but Kelly reassured her that she couldn't scare her away. Finally, Yorkie agreed to let Kelly visit her in the real world. The two embraced tightly once more. It was midnight once again. In reality, Kelly was now an old woman with graying hair at her temples. Cancer had ravaged her body, and she needed a caregiver's assistance to move around freely. The two of them got into a car from a past era and headed to Yorkie's hospital. Upon arriving at the hospital, the doctor informed Kelly that Yorkie was waiting for her. He led her to an intensive care unit, explaining that Yorkie could hear her but wouldn't physically respond. A rigid, vacant-eyed elderly woman was lying in bed, hooked up to a ventilator. Kelly was shocked to see her in this state. She gently touched Yorkie's hand, greeted her, and kissed her forehead. As Kelly was about to leave, Yorkie's caregiver asked to speak with her. He recounted Yorkie's story. She had confessed to her conservative parents at the age of 21, but they had rejected her, saying they didn't want a lesbian daughter. After a heated argument, the heartbroken Yorkie had driven recklessly and ended up in a car accident, which left her in her current state. For more than 40 years, she had been bedridden in a semi-vegetative state. The virtual world system was crucial to Yorkie, offering her significant support and the promise of a better life after death. Living people could only spend 5 hours per week in the virtual world, as staying too long would disrupt their lives in the real world. Nevertheless, this immersive therapy had proven effective for patients like her and even helped treat dementia. Only after death could someone live there indefinitely. Euthanasia required family consent, but Yorkie's parents were vehemently opposed. The only option was to find a husband willing to sign the papers. The kind-hearted caregiver agreed to marry her. Yorkie planned to marry him, undergo euthanasia, and upload her consciousness to the cloud, where she would stay forever in paradise. Kelly wanted to chat with Yorkie and asked the caregiver to connect them to the artificial paradise. Since this violated the rules, they were only given 5 minutes. Once connected, Kelly told Yorkie they were short on time and asked if she was really planning to die after the wedding. Yorkie confirmed her plan to undergo euthanasia after getting married. Surprisingly, Kelly got down on one knee and proposed, asking Yorkie to marry someone she genuinely loved instead. Overwhelmed with emotion, Yorkie tearfully accepted, and the two shared a kiss. The following day, a priest conducted a simple wedding ceremony for the couple. Kelly placed her fingerprint on the euthanasia consent form, and a chemical solution flowed through a tube, warming Yorkie's body as she peacefully left the painful world behind. Her consciousness remained within the device. With tears of joy, Kelly, dressed in a wedding gown, went to greet Yorkie, who was also wearing a gown. They looked incredibly beautiful and captivating. After a few hours, Yorkie asked Kelly to stay with her in this virtual world after her death. Kelly was displeased by the request and reminded Yorkie that she would have to leave in 10 minutes while Yorkie would have to wait another week to see her again. Yorkie argued that Kelly could stay there forever. Kelly replied that she had married Yorkie only to help her with the euthanasia paperwork. Yorkie tried to say something, but Kelly interrupted, insisting she had made up her mind. Yorkie asked if she felt guilty about coming to this place alone because her husband wasn't there. She suggested that Kelly's husband could join them, but he had abandoned her by not coming and he was selfish. At that moment, Kelly slapped her, saying that she had been with him for 49 years and that Yorkie couldn't possibly understand the bond that forms over such a long marriage, the love and disdain they had shared. They once had a lovely daughter who passed away at the age of 39. Back then, this technology didn't exist, so their daughter couldn't come here. As a result, Kelly's husband refused to come here as well. She insisted on leaving, ignoring Yorkie's pleas and driving away. Kelly felt terrible. She floored the accelerator, speeding madly to vent her emotions, and eventually crashed into a roadblock, flying out of the car. She tumbled many times on the ground, but fortunately, this was a virtual world, or she would have been beyond saving. The guilt-ridden Yorkie approached, reaching out her hands to help. When the clock struck midnight, Kelly's time was up. As she was still alive, she could only spend 5 hours per week in the artificial paradise. For Yorkie, paradise without Kelly would feel much less joyful. Kelly's health was deteriorating, and she could leave this world at any moment. After a fierce struggle, she made up her mind. She was ready for the journey ahead. A chemical solution was injected into her body through a tube, and she serenely left this world. Her body was buried alongside her husband and daughter in a peaceful graveyard, accompanying them. However, her consciousness was uploaded to the cloud, where she appeared in her most youthful and beautiful form, happily reunited with Yorkie. Together, they created wonderful memories, never to be separated again. Their consciousnesses were stored permanently in a vast, boundless database. No longer worrying about the limitations of time, the gazes of others, or physical pain, they lived happily ever after in this paradise. The fourth story, titled Shut Up and Dance, begins with a car pulling into a parking lot. A lady wearing glasses gets out of the car and cautiously looks around, as if someone is following her. Seeing no one nearby, she stealthily places an object on top of her rear tire. Kenny is a young man who recently entered the workforce. He works at a restaurant, doing odd jobs like cleaning dishes and tidying up tables. One day, he's clearing a table when a little girl and her mother finish their meal and prepare to leave. Kenny suddenly calls out to them, realizing the girl has forgotten her toy. Picking it up, he returns it to her. The girl happily thanks Kenny and waves goodbye before leaving. Kenny responds with a bright smile. After a long day of work, Kenny returns home, only to find that his younger sister had been using his laptop without permission. To make matters worse, she had installed some software that caused the laptop to crash. Frustrated, Kenny takes the laptop to his room and forcefully restarts it. He discovers a malicious ad that had been planted, indicating that his computer had likely been infected with a virus. He searches for a free antivirus software and downloads an executable file from what appears to be a legitimate website. He installs it but doesn't know this action will ruin his life. The next day, after work, Kenny comes home and watches a provocative show in the living room. Unable to resist temptation, he sneaks back to his room while his sister is on her phone, locks the door, and opens an adult website. He prepares a box of tissues at the ready and enjoys himself facing the screen. After washing his smelly hands, he returns to his computer and finds a new email in his inbox. To his horror, the email states that they saw what he did, and it includes a video of him entertaining himself. Kenny is petrified by the video. He slams the laptop shut and covers the webcam with a sticker, but it's too late. Another email arrives demanding his phone number, threatening to send the video to everyone he knows. He has no choice but to comply. He receives a new text message instructing him to turn on his phone's location services and remain on standby. Kenny anxiously asks who they are and if they want money, but they don't respond. They only warn him not to tell anyone as they're watching him. Kenny becomes even more terrified, wondering if they're nearby and if he has any privacy left. He spends a sleepless night in fear, consumed by terror. The next day, like usual, Kenny rides his Tesla bike to work at the restaurant. However, before he even has a chance to change his clothes, he receives a text message from the hacker, giving him a task and threatening him to obey. The hacker sends him coordinates and tells him to go there. Despite being at work, Kenny has no choice but to obey the hacker's command. He has to get to the location within 45 minutes, or the video will be leaked. Google Maps estimates it will take an hour to get there, so Kenny pretends to be constipated and asks his supervisor for some time off to go home. Before the supervisor can answer, Kenny leaves. Riding his Tesla bike as fast as lightning, Kenny races towards the destination, risking his life to get there within the deadline. When he finally arrives, he is met by a man on a Ferrari motorcycle. The man hands him a white box with 4 numbers on it and takes out his phone to snap a good-looking photo of Kenny. The man tells him that he too is being forced to do this by the mysterious person. With that, he takes off on his Ferrari motorcycle like riding a horse. Kenny then receives another text message instructing him to deliver the box to the specified location. But carrying the box while riding his bike proves to be too difficult. After struggling for a while, he decides to abandon his beloved Tesla bike and take the bus instead. Curious about the contents of the box, he sneaks a peek and finds that it's just a cake. Finally, he arrives at the delivery destination, a budget hotel. The hacker tells Kenny to deliver the cake to a specific room. When he knocks on the door and explains his purpose, the person inside claims they didn't order any delivery. Kenny insists the cake is sent to him. The person still denies ordering the cake and threatens to call the police if Kenny doesn't leave. Desperate, he asks the hacker for help, who tells him to mention a name, Mindy. This works and the door opens. After explaining his situation, the man named Hector tries to ask more questions, but the hacker sends another text message telling Kenny to take a handsome photo of Hector. Reluctantly, he does so. After the photo is taken, Hector says the hacker sent him coordinates to deliver the cake to another location, where they've prepared a car for them in a parking lot. The two of them head to the underground parking garage, the same one where the lady with glasses had been at the beginning. They find the car, and following the hacker's instructions, locate the car keys that the lady had left on the rear tire. Hector asks Kenny if he can drive since he has been drinking. Kenny replies that he can't drive and doesn't have a license. With no other choice, Hector decides to drive under the influence. On the way, Hector tells Kenny that he actually went to the hotel to find a prostitute named Mindy, but he has a family, so it's a bit difficult to talk about. He just wanted to be with a younger girl. Out of curiosity, he clicked on a website where a girl claiming to be Mindy started chatting with him. They exchanged some dirty photos and then were threatened by the hacker. The hacker claimed to have accessed all of Hector's information, including photos, chat logs, and detailed records of his whereabouts. Hector loves his child, but if he were to divorce, he would probably lose contact with his daughter. After hearing this, Kenny lowers his guard and tells Hector his story. At this point, their car runs out of fuel. They quickly drive to a gas station to refuel. Hector fuels up the car and tells Kenny to pay to save time. Kenny uses Hector's credit card to pay for the gas. When he comes out, he sees Hector has run into a friend. Hector lies and says Kenny is his nephew, and he's about to take him to the train station. The friend, however, asks for a ride to the train station as well. The two of them don't want to do it because the train station is in the opposite direction from where the hacker wants them to go. But they can't refuse her persistent requests and let her get in the car. Once in the car, she starts chatting endlessly with Hector about trivial things. The hacker sends a text message saying they're going in the wrong direction and gives them 20 minutes to reach the designated location, or else they'll be exposed. Now Hector is truly anxious. He floors the gas pedal, driving like a mad cow. The passengers in the car are swaying as if on a roller coaster. He then performs a drift and almost crashes into an oncoming car. The friend, fearing for her shitty life, finally asks to get out of the car. Hector immediately stops the car and pushes her heavy body off, getting rid of the nuisance. The two of them drive to the designated location, where the hacker instructs them to reach inside the cake. Inside, there's a handgun, sunglasses, and a hat. They're both shocked. The hacker sends another text message telling them to decide within 5 minutes who will drive and who will rob a bank. They look ahead and see a small bank. Kenny quickly claims he will drive the car, while Hector is even more anxious and insists that he can't because Kenny just said he couldn't drive. Kenny tells him that he really can't rob the bank. Hector tries to calm him down, saying that they have hats and sunglasses for disguise and that the bank tellers are trained to handle this situation and will surely hand over the money. Seeing Kenny refuse again, Hector says that if they don't do this, the hacker will expose them, and he will lose his daughter and have to terminate himself. This time, Hector doesn't give Kenny a choice. He puts the hat on his head, forcefully hands him the gun, and pushes him out of the car. Kenny has no choice but to go into the bank alone. Entering the bank, he takes out the gun and demands money from the teller, causing panic among the customers. The teller is so scared that she can barely breathe. Kenny is even more nervous, to the point that he wets his pants. The teller asks him to hand over the bag, and with trembling hands, she puts the money inside. Kenny, still shaking his smelly sausage, stumbles out of the bank. The two hurriedly flee in the car. Hector notices the wet spot on Kenny's pants, and he awkwardly uses his hat to cover his private but smelly area. Just then, a police car with sirens blaring drives by, but luckily, they aren't discovered. The car is certainly heading towards the bank. They finally make it back to the designated location, and they receive another message from the hacker. Hector is told to drive away and destroy the car, while Kenny gets a message instructing him to take the money to a nearby location. Hector stops the car and apologizes to Kenny, feeling guilty about what just happened. After a brief chat, the two shake hands and say goodbye. Hector leaves to destroy the car, while Kenny heads to the next location with the money. There, he meets another man who tells him to wait and launches a drone into the sky. The man tells Kenny that the hacker wants them to fight each other or else their secrets will be exposed. The winner will take the money, and the hacker is watching them through the drone's camera. When asked what leverage the hacker has on him, Kenny just says he looked at some pictures. The man asks how old the child in the photos is, but Kenny falls silent with an expression of extreme pain. The man, understanding the situation, says, "Me too." The hacker sends another message, urging them to fight to the death. The man charges forward, but Kenny quickly takes out the gun. The man instantly backs down, begging for his life. However, Kenny isn't one to hurt others. He turns the gun on himself, pressing it against his chin, and pulls the trigger. But the gun has no bullets. He failed to send himself to meet Jesus. The man, seeing this, lunges at Kenny again. Meanwhile, Hector finally returns to his warm home, overwhelmed with emotion as he sees his adorable daughter. Just then, he receives an emoji. He then enters the bedroom to find his wife in tears. The untrustworthy hacker has exposed Hector's secret of soliciting a prostitute. Hector is left in despair. The camera turns to the beginning of the story, where the lady with glasses who handed over the car key also receives the same emoji. She has been exposed for her racial discrimination and is a CEO of a company. The hacker manipulates her, but her dark secret is still revealed. The cake delivery motorcyclist has also been exposed, but the film doesn't explain what he did wrong. After winning the fight, Kenny limps his way home. His mother calls, and it turns out that Kenny has a child obsession. The hacker exposed this dark history to all his family and friends. After hanging up, he checks his phone to find the terrifying emoji again. Suddenly, police lights flash behind him. Panicked, he looks back to see several fully armed officers approaching, indicating his tragic fate. The fifth story, titled Men Against Fire, begins with a beautiful girl appearing on the screen, bewitching and gentle. The scene is so stunningly surreal that it seems like a dream. Indeed, it is just a dream. A soldier named Stripe is experiencing rhythmic trembling of his lips and fingers. He wants to finish this dream before waking up, but suddenly a muscular female soldier, Raymond, appears and calls out from the bed. The captain informs everyone that they have a mission. A civilian granary has been invaded by a group of pale, humanoid monsters called roaches, and the food has been stolen. As a rookie, Stripe joins the team for the first time, filled with both excitement and anxiety. The team arrives at the granary and learns about the situation. Upon inspecting the warehouse, they find that the food has been spoiled by the roaches, and the villagers are too afraid to eat it. One villager says that the roaches might be hiding in the farmhouse of an old Christian who has been protecting them. The entire team sets out for the farmhouse. Along the way, the captain sends detailed information to everyone through a neural system called MASS, which is implanted in each soldier's brain and provides data via augmented reality. This projection-like interface can only be seen by the user and doesn't require a screen, making it quite convenient. The team approached the farmhouse using drones to survey the surrounding area. The captain controlled the drone with his fingertips, his eyes appearing vacant as he was watching the drone's footage through the MASS. He sent a 3D projection of the house's layout to each team member's MASS for them to examine. After devising a plan, they began their operation. The soldiers prepared for a surprise attack to eliminate the roach's lair. The captain faked his purpose to chat with the house owner, gaining his trust and successfully getting the door opened. The team members cautiously entered the large house. The captain instructed Stripe and Raymond to inspect the rooms upstairs for any traces of roaches, while he stayed downstairs, engaging in a battle of wits with the house owner, trying to extract information from him. Raymond and Stripe didn't find any roaches upstairs, so they decided to split up. Raymond went downstairs to search, while Stripe continued to explore the area for new discoveries. He noticed a curtain, behind which seemed to be something hidden. He swiftly pulled back the curtain, revealing a group of grotesque roaches. One monster was holding a green-lit device, waving it wildly at his face. Stripe shot it dead without hesitation. Hearing the gunshot, everyone downstairs became alert. The house owner, realizing things were going south, picked up a knife and began attacking the captain. Meanwhile, Stripe was entangled in a fierce fight with another monster. The ugly monster kept attempting to use the device to counterattack, but ultimately failed. Stripe drove his dagger deep into its throat. The monster let out a painful cry in a chicken voice, flailing its arms in a final struggle before dying. Enraged, Stripe continued to slash at the monster's corpse, venting his hatred. He then noticed the green light on the floor, wondering what it was. As he picked it up to examine, it briefly shone in his eyes, causing a feeling of interference. Feeling somewhat off, he composed himself and threw the device back on the floor. The captain had already captured the house owner who had been hiding the roaches. Raymond aimed her gun at the house owner's head, ready to blow it off. Stripe rushed to stop her, urging her not to massacre civilians. Reluctantly, Raymond lowered her gun and scolded him for meddling. That sense of interference and discomfort returned, as if his brain was being disrupted. Later, the team burned the house to ashes to prevent the filthy corpses from spreading disease to the villagers. The green light device also turned to ash. During the mission, Stripe had killed 2 roaches, earning the admiration of his teammates. After a day of battling, he could finally have a good night's sleep. In his dream, his beautiful girlfriend appeared, but the scene froze for a moment. Fortunately, it resumed shortly after. In reality, everyone's dreams were pre-programmed and implanted into their brain. The next day, they arrived at the shooting range for practice. Stripe was brimming with confidence. The mass perfectly assisted the soldiers in shooting, hitting the target with the first shot. However, during the second shot, the system malfunctioned and was disrupted, causing the shot to go off course. Stripe felt uneasy again. Later, while practicing push-ups, Stripe experienced the same confused feeling in his head. He had no choice but to seek help from the military doctor to check his body, and whether there was an issue with the mass. The doctor played a 3D holographic projection to test the system. Stripe accurately tapped each apple with his finger, and the doctor said everything was normal. He speculated that it might be some side effects from the recent battle, but there was no need to worry. Stripe mentioned that during the last battle, a device had flashed in his eyes, and he wondered if it had any impact. The doctor assured him that all his tests were normal and suggested that he talk to the professor. Stripe discussed the issue with the professor, who said his implant had passed all tests and there should be no problem. The professor encouraged Stripe to feel proud of his achievements and, as a token of appreciation, decided to reward him with a more exhilarating dream that night. The dream was more thrilling and exciting than ever, involving a provocative scenario. However, this time it got stuck, and after a long while, Stripe woke up. This was unusual since people with the mass implants shouldn't wake up in the middle of the night on their own. Seeing his teammates sleeping soundly and their fingers twitching rhythmically, he knew they were dreaming. Afterward, the team received intel on a hideout for more roaches, and they set out once more. The 3 who were dispatched included the captain, the bloodthirsty warrior Raymond, and the recently decorated Stripe. The enemies were hiding in an abandoned building. The captain devised a plan, and Stripe picked up a clump of grass from the ground and smelled it. Although soldiers with the mass implants shouldn't be able to smell, he detected the scent of the grass, which seemed a bit off. The captain received orders from above to retreat, but suddenly a gunshot rang out, and the captain's head was blown off on the spot. The 2 were frightened, and Stripe crawled over to check the captain's wounds. His eye had been shot through, and he was already dead and sent to meet the virtual Jesus. Raymond sent out a drone to assess the situation and found a roach sniper by a window, who then shot down the drone as well. Determined to confront the roaches, the 2 decided to storm the abandoned building and strike at their lair. After searching for a while, they found a room with materials and blueprints on the wall. Stripe noticed that the parts on the table resembled the device he had seen earlier, and the blueprint on the wall explained the device's impact on the brain. However, he still didn't understand its purpose. The two split up, and Stripe found a terrified woman in a room. She seemed extremely frightened and threatened him with a baseball bat. Stripe tried to calm her down, assuring her that he wouldn't hurt her, but she remained skeptical and cautiously backed away. Just as she reached the middle of the hallway, a gunshot from the right struck her down, the work of Bloody Raymond, who looked proud as if she had achieved something great. Stripe approached Raymond, asking her what she had done. She had killed an innocent civilian. Raymond ignored him and continued shooting at her next target. The battle was intense, with the roaches being shot left and right. Just then, Stripe saw a woman hiding in panic behind the sofa. Knowing she was an innocent civilian, Stripe wrestled his muscles with Raymond and knocked her down to the ground. Raymond, frustrated, asked him what he was doing. As they fought, Raymond accidentally shot Stripe in the abdomen. Despite his injury, he managed to stand up, called the woman he had found earlier and her little brother, and quickly left the building. Meanwhile, Raymond regained consciousness and rushed to the window, watching the three of them escape into the distance. Stripe drove the military vehicle with the woman and boy speeding away. He had been enduring the pain from his abdominal injury, and blood kept flowing. After driving for a while, Stripe finally collapsed onto the steering wheel. When he woke up again, he saw the young boy talking to his sister. The woman struggled to drag him to an open area and lifted a few wooden planks on the ground, revealing a secret hideout. Upon waking up once more, the woman was wiping the sweat from his face with a towel, and his abdomen was wrapped in bandages. She took care of him attentively. Noticing he was awake, the woman stepped back, watching him cautiously. She asked him if he could see her true appearance. He replied that he could, of course. The woman then asked if he saw her as a roach. He was surprised and told her not to joke around, as she didn't look like one at all, and the roaches couldn't speak. The woman explained that they couldn't hear their speech because of the mass implanted by the military, which blocked all communication. It was implanted into his brain to assist in combat, creating illusions to make the roaches appear as monsters. However, they had a genius who created a device that could interfere with the implant when its green light was flashing. He told her that he had seen real roaches before, and they weren't like her at all. The woman said that was what the mass made him see. At this point, Raymond had caught up with them and found their military vehicle. She touched the hood, feeling the heat and smelling the hormone trace like a dog, and she knew they hadn't gone far. He questioned why ordinary people without the mass also feared and hated roaches. The woman explained that they were taught to hate them. After the war ended 10 years ago, the government conducted DNA tests through a screening program. Soon, everyone, including the media and the internet, started calling them dirty monsters, saying they carried diseases, had flawed blood, and that their lineage couldn't continue. The woman cautiously touched his cheek with her finger. He was too shocked to move. At that moment, Raymond found them and, ignoring his protests, shot the woman down. The woman's brother tried to rush forward but was also shot down. Raymond pointed her gun at his head, demanding a reason not to kill him. In immense pain, he said that everything they saw was fake. Believing he had gone mad, Raymond knocked him out. Stripe was brought back to the military base, feeling distraught and unable to accept the act of killing. The professor apologized, saying they had just discovered a device that could deactivate the mass. Stripe insisted that everything was a lie, and the professor agreed. That's why they were so dangerous. According to the professor, statistics show that in a World War II battle, only 10–20% of soldiers would pull the trigger. If all soldiers could follow orders to kill the enemy, the war would end quickly. So the military intensified psychological training for soldiers, raising the shooting rate to 80%. However, the accuracy rate remained low, and soldiers who shot and killed would return home with psychological issues. The mass is the ultimate military weapon, capable of analyzing intelligence, identifying targets, and facilitating communication. It's much easier to pull the trigger when aiming at a roach. The mass doesn't just affect your eyes, it also blocks out other sensations, causing one to be unable to hear terrifying screams or smell the blood and other odors. Stripe retorted that they're human. The professor responded that these roaches have higher cancer rates, more muscular dystrophy, and a higher inclination towards crime. The genetic screening results are clear. What the soldiers are doing is to protect the pure bloodline of the human race. Stripe argued that this was clearly indiscriminate killing, but the professor mentioned that he agreed to have the mass implanted. Stripe laughed and asked when he had given his consent. The professor then produced a display showing a video of him signing the agreement 6 months prior. Stripe had no memory of this and insisted he never signed it. The video suddenly froze, revealing it was artificially created, just like the implanted dreams. Furious, Stripe flipped over a chair and tried to attack the professor, but his vision was controlled by the mass. A remote control press rendered him unable to see the professor, making his attack efforts futile. The professor asked him to choose either to accept the mass reset, erasing his memories of the past few days, or to be sent straight to prison. Stripe cursed, but the professor reminded him the mass was his friend, without which he would remember everything. Stripe declared he didn't need the mass, and the professor showed him what life would be like without it. As images appeared before his eyes, Stripe asked where they were from. The professor explained they were from his visit to the farmhouse a few days ago. They could replay everything he had done in the past. Roaches with fierce faces turned into civilians begging for human mercy, only to be killed by Stripe with a single shot. The unbearable scenes continued to play before his eyes, despite his resistance. He plunged a dagger deep into an innocent civilian's throat and began to whip the corpse. The strong smell of blood filled his nostrils. After watching the playback, Stripe collapsed on the ground. The professor asked how he felt, offering to play the footage on loop in a solitary confinement cell. Then, pretending to console Stripe, he said they could make all of it disappear, erasing his unpleasant memories. The professor believed he would make a rational choice. A few days later, Stripe was promoted to a higher military rank. He wore a brand new uniform and even had a personal driver. The driver took him to the place from his dream, and his new uniform looked even more handsome. The scenery before him was as beautiful as a fairy tale world, but in reality, it was just a dilapidated, abandoned room. Stripe was moved by this magical fairy tale world, and tears streamed down his cheeks. His girlfriend from within the mask gazed at him lovingly and slowly walked towards him. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.